Joining me now is Mike Wendling. He is editor at BBC Trending, and he did a fascinating series on getting together a Proud Boy leader and an Antifa leader. I can't wait to find out what happened. Mike, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me back.
No problem. So, Mike, tell us about the two guests that you brought together and their backgrounds before we get to what they did when they got together.
Yeah, sure. Interesting. Two guys, similar age, mid-40s. Luis, anti-fascist activist. Rob, Proud Boy. They both meet on the streets of Portland, Oregon, where there's been obviously a lot of clashes between those two groups. We managed to convince them to sit down and actually have a conversation of sorts. It was a little bit tense throughout, but we really wanted to sort of see if they would actually have anything in common, and actually the answer is not really.
Oh, wow, that is, all these stories always end with like, but at the end they realized that they had a lot more in common than they had that separated them. No, they didn't. No, well, okay, no, they're really different. Okay, so that's awesome. I don't want it to be that way, but it's fascinating. So we're gonna break all that down. I'm just kind of curious, it's on BBC's Crossing Divide season. So I want the audience to know, like, how long was this and where can they see it? Because it's so interesting.
So it's various products. So it's TV doc, which is on BBC World. You can listen to our podcast. Just search for BBC Trending, and then that is 2 parts. And if you are a glutton for punishment, you can watch the whole hour-long conversation. We put that on the BBC Trending YouTube channel.
No, I would love to see that. I love this conversation. So let's start with Rob, who's the Proud Boy guy. Now, he in and of himself has a fascinating story. So is he a wealthy millionaire or billionaire looking to protect his assets? What motivates him to be so conservative?
Quite the opposite. I mean, like a lot of the people who are in the, I suppose, new far right, people who are involved in the alt-right, he's pretty much on the margins of society. When we met him, he was living in his car, basically. He had a FEMA tent in Northern California that he would sometimes sleep in. I mean, these are the people who are like on the margins of society. But what he found in the Proud Boys was a gang of brothers. It turns out that perhaps they weren't so brotherly as he thought, because after this program was broadcast, they started to denounce him. They didn't quite like his very sort of overt messaging when it came to violence. But leaving that aside, he thought that he had found something in the Proud Boys that was missing from the rest of his life, which was a pretty tough life. He told us from top to bottom his life story. His dad abandoning him. It was not a pretty sight.
Well, doesn't he live on a government check right now?
Well, that's the other interesting thing, yeah. And the Proud Boys, one of their 10 stated aims is to end all welfare. I put it to him that his $900 disability check could be considered welfare. He didn't quite make the connection, and maybe that's partly because he was smoking a lot of high-strength cannabis oil. That could be part of it, but I think more to the point, it's this cognitive dissonance. What's really interesting is that when Luis, the anti-fascist, said, Rob, I don't just want a better country for me and my children. I want free healthcare for everyone. I want good education for everyone. It was interesting. He didn't sort of break down Rob's, complete opposition to anything but extreme libertarian capitalism by, that statement.
Rob looks like that guy who attacked the Berkeley bookstore. Is he that guy?
Rob is that guy who threatened to burn down a bookstore in Berkeley. That's him.
Man, I followed the news way too closely. Okay, so I want to say one more thing about Rob and the Proud Boys, and then I think the Antifa part is equally interesting. So the Proud Boys, if they're denouncing him for talking about violence, isn't that preposterous? Isn't violence part of their initiation and going to different levels based on violence?
Yeah, I guess the initiation is definitely a political initiation, right? Because they have to recite their creed about Western culture, and then there's sort of like a fake play fight. If you look at the videos online, and there's some that we played in the documentary, they kind of just give each other little rabbit punches. But there's always been this more serious strain of violence in the movement. It's clear from its founder, Gavin McInnes, who's made pretty blanket statements about violence solving everything. The litany of criminal charges that have happened, New York, Portland, other places, Berkeley, against Proud Boys. I think what sort of irritated his fellow Proud Boys was Rob was just completely upfront about it. We've been talking to him for months trying to set this up, and he never sort of shied away from just saying, you know what, I'm a violent guy. We're all about violence, which was surprising, very honest of him, but didn't win him any friends amongst his brothers.
Yeah, I guess they forgot to tell him to lie about it. Which is what Gavin McInnes does. And there, you talk about it. There's an honorary 4th degree you can get in, which is the highest degree in Proud Boys. I'm sure that Gavin McInnes will lie about that and say it's not true, but that they get to that if they do physical violence.
Oh, they were very open with us. I mean, other than actually threatening to sue when we even sort of approached Mr. McInnes and the former Proud Boy lawyer. They were open about the 4th degree, but they said, "Oh no, it's all about self-defense. We would never condone violence." Their actions perhaps give a different story.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to Antifa. So I don't. This is a funny thing to say and admit on it. I don't know much about Antifa, and I don't, because there's so much right-wing caricatures of them that it's hard to discern what's real and what's propaganda. So, does Antifa also believe in violence?
Yeah, they would also say that they are in favor of violence only in self-defense, right? And again, they have people in their ranks who are arrested, who have been arrested on fairly serious charges. Luis actually just got off on some charges. One of the sort of differences, I guess, is that when we were hanging out with the Antifa activists, they go to, they all live in Portland. Many of them are from Portland. The Proud Boys are coming in sometimes from very far away, sometimes from, like Rob, Northern California and Southern Oregon, sometimes even further than that, to participate in these marches. Now, it's debatable whether in any one instance who starts it, right? Sometimes video can be edited, or people can misrepresent things clearly, but there's that dynamic there where there are people who are in a city and then there's people who are coming from outside.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things I'm concerned about is they don't really seem to believe in freedom of speech either. And I'm overgeneralizing here, but Luis, in your documentary, keeps talking about how words have consequences and Hitler killed people with words. And so while there's merit to that argument, it is also problematic constitutionally.
Yeah, that's right. And if you talk to people in Portland who aren't at these extremes of politics, you'll find a lot of people who, say, "To hell with you both." We don't want the Proud Boys marching. We don't want anti-fascists out in the streets participating in these fights. The anti-fascists argue that the only way that Proud Boys and there's a related group called Patriot Prayer are going to stop marching in Portland is if people come out and directly confront them. But a lot of people in Portland actually sort of disagree on what directly confronting them means. And certainly the anti-fascists are they're not afraid of violence. And, as we found, some of them do come to rallies armed. Some of them even just sort of walk around the streets of Portland armed. It's a volatile situation. And you can't imagine that it's all going to end well all the time. And we've seen time and time again in Portland and other cities that it doesn't.
Yeah. By the way, if I'm misrepresenting anyone, I would be happy to have a member of Antifa on the show, or even the Proud Boys, so they can clarify it for themselves. Mike, we're out of time. I gotta just ask one super last quick thing, which is, did they have any points of agreement, or did they walk out just as hostile as they came in?
We showed them video of each of them, being very, very aggressive. We showed Rob being aggressive at that bookstore. We showed Luis being aggressive towards a right-wing protester. At one point, Luis apologized for his actions. Rob said, "You know what? It takes a big man to say that." And I thought that it was a breakthrough. But for the hour and a half that we spoke to them, that was pretty much the only moment where there could have been a meeting of minds.
I got you. All right, everybody check it out on BBC Trending. Really interesting. Mike Wendling, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.